Hello and welcome to episode 101 of Toward a Better Life.
As I went out walking on the 12th night, past all of the houses beyond the street lights, to old apple trees, an orchard I knew. As a boy I might have scrumped there an apple or two. The full moon of winter shone down on the land. The sign said keep out, I did not understand. Then I saw all the trees lying dead on the land, and I started singing a song. Wassail all over the town. Our toast it is white and our ale it is brown. Our bowl it is made of the white maple tree, with a wassailing bowl we'll drink to thee. Stepped into the field, saw the bricks and barbed wire, then the full moon revealed. Down by a hedgerow, what do I see? Standing defiant, the last apple tree. There's a circle of people, I don't know how. There's fresh fallen snow and they're standing there now, and I watch as they hang some toast on the bough, and they start singing a song. Wassail, wassail all over the town. Our toast it is white and our ale it is brown. Our bowl it is made of the white maple tree, with a wassailing bowl we'll drink to thee. I step out under the street lights, same as before. A long orchard close and up Apple Street, the freshly laid pavement under my feet. Still standing by the hedgerow, the last apple tree. Curtains are twitching, then what do I see? As every door opens and they join in with me, and we start singing a song. Wassail, wassail all over the town. Our toast it is white and our ale it is brown. Our bowl it is made of the white maple tree, with a wassailing bowl. Wassail, wassail all over the town. Our toast it is white and our ale it is brown. Our bowl it is made of the white maple tree, with a wassailing bowl we'll drink to thee. To the last apple
This is Kevin Pinnell, and that was Dave the Bard with The Last Apple Tree from his album Raise the Flag of Green, available from his website, paganmusic.co.uk. There's a link in the show notes for more information about Dave the Bard and his many offerings. Toward a Better Life podcast features like-minded people sharing stories, ideas, and activities on what can be done to generate a better life individually and collectively. You can share your prose, your music, your poetry, your storytelling on the show too. Just send them to me, Kevin at towardaBetterLife.com. That's Kevin, towardaBetterLife.com. If it's an audio file, please send it to me as an MP3. I hope you enjoy the episode today. Please follow and subscribe to the show for self-development and self-care through your favorite podcast platform. And please support the show by leaving your review on Apple Podcasts. It's a nice chance to tell us what you think, and it also helps others to discover it as well. In Dave the Bard's song that you heard here just a minute ago, The Last Apple Tree, you may have noted that Dave tells the story about someone who's gone through a change in their life. The change redefines their life toward essentially one of empowerment. This episode's guest, J.J. Flizanes, helps all sorts of people toward their path of empowerment. J.J. is an empowerment strategist and the creator of the Empowering Minds Network. She works with conscious, spiritual truth seekers who want to remove emotional blocks to success. She helps people identify sabotaging patterns and transmute the struggle into joy. Through a series of clarifying exercises, she's able to curate a personalized roadmap to emotional healing. JJ's passionate about empowering people with the knowledge and awareness of how they can live the life of their dreams. Let's settle in and learn a little bit about personal empowerment from J.J. Flizanes. Welcome again to Toward a Better Life, and today I'm talking with J.J. Flizanes out in California about some really cool empowerment strategies. How are you doing, J.J.? Good to see you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me. I'm great. Looking forward to having a good conversation with you.
So you're the creator of Empowering Minds Network. You have a very, I'm going to use the term dynamic website. There's all kinds of opportunities there. There's terms that I like to talk about, if we could, about removing emotional blocks and clarifying exercises. So we can just kind of take off from there. If you want to give a little background about yourself, that's fine. But I think it's kind of self-explanatory. We'll figure it out as we go, and I might ask some questions along the way. But let's start off with the idea of emotional blocks. You know, we think about emotional blocks, and I've mentioned a couple of times before that oftentimes there's been some studies that have shown that poor emotions will eventually wreak havoc on our physical body. And to be able to say that you're going to remove some emotional blocks is going to promote healthy living, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I would argue and have proof that the emotions are the most important thing to your health.
Oh God,
actually.
yes. Oh,
Yeah.
You betcha. No argument necessary. Totally with you 100%. So, yeah.
Yeah. And because it's our energy, and your energy in that environment creates health or destroys health.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we look at healthy living, which I did for a long time as a personal trainer for 25 years, and I'm still healthy living. I'm just not focused 100% on someone's diet and exercise and wellness at that level, because as a truth seeker my whole life, I've always asked questions and tried to find the root cause without knowing. I was trying to find the root cause of why something is the way that it is.
Yep.
And why we feel the way we feel, why we react the way we react, why do some people act differently than others? Those have just been questions that I've asked my whole life until I found the answers that pleased me. And when it comes to emotions, I mean, as a personal trainer, I saw so many people with all these pains, and I was really good with the body to be able to handle all the special cases and people with 7 injuries and it couldn't work out with anybody else. But it begged the question, why are you in so much pain? What caused this pain? What caused this pain when your labs, when your x-rays, when your alignment is fine, when we can't see something obvious that's creating pain, and even when we can, because Dr. John Sarno, who has since passed away, who wrote the book Healing Back Pain and the Mind-Body Prescription, he was a back surgeon for 30 years and a spinal surgeon. And he came out to say basically that spinal pain is not physical. It's
But
emotional.
but no, go on.
Uh, and that was one of the principles that was pretty life-changing back when I was introduced to his work, probably again, literally 25 years ago. And so when looking at clients and even just myself, and then of course relationships and how we live in our bodies, to me, if you don't care about how you feel, your body will make it a important part somewhere in the future. If you
Yeah.
ignore yourself and neglect your emotions long enough, you will have some kind of condition and some kind of dis-ease and some kind of disharmony that begs for your attention, so much so that it'll take you down until you pay attention to it. So I'm a big proponent of figuring those things out before they happen and
Mhm.
helping people to change patterns and rewire their core wound patterns before it becomes a big problem.
And that's another area of curiosity and even an area of interest on my part because of some of the stuff I remember from a few years ago about there was a book by Doc Childress called Freeze Frame, and he talked about how when you feel some sort of an emotion erupting within yourself and before it explodes out into the surface, you freeze frame and you stop doing what you're doing and try to deal with it. And part of the process of that they talk about is re-hardwiring your brain. And that kind of says it all to me. It change your thought, change your life. I mean, it's a cliche, but how often do we really absorb the content of that statement? You know, so
Well, if we're trying to do it through our head and not our body, we're not going to be able to embed it deep enough.
amen.
Yeah. And that's what most people are. And you know, what I really love about podcasting and this platform and what I've seen over the years is I'll attract like people that are very interested in this topic. And I'm a pretty hard salesperson on my show because I'm begging people to get out from behind the earbuds and come to a live event, do a group, come to a group coaching call that I'm doing, take action because listening to it is not enough. And even though
Mhm.
I teach actionable things people can do in their lives and have resulted in their success, and I hear about it later, there's only so much you can do because you can only see so much of what you're doing. Like we only have a certain perspective about who we are and what we're capable of in our own patterns. It helps to have another perspective to see what you can't see. And again, to push yourself into literally a new wiring of the brain, which only happens in experience and only happens when you're out of your comfort zone. If you're in your comfort zone, then there'll be growth, but it won't be monumental or life-changing because it can't be, because that's the whole point of it is we have parts of our brain that tells us we want to stay safe. And so we do whatever we can in order to, whatever that perception is, to stay safe. And that's going to be repress emotions. That's going to be stay in a bad situation because the fear of the unknown can be greater than the fear of growth, especially when you don't know what that's going to feel like. It's amazing how many people are so afraid of everything that illogically, and they'll know, like I had a client yesterday who did her first summit and she's a business owner and she's done webinars and but it was the tech and she was so nervous, but so nervous that she was crying like the day
Mhm.
before. And it's like, well, that's not something logical that we're going to figure out in our brain until we understand the root cause of who we are in the world, which to me comes from your core wounds. And so I got really interested in core wound understanding about 15 years ago and actually developed an entire program and around the idea of core wound. I created something called a core wound map. And I don't know if you've heard of Harville Hendrix and Helen LaKelly Hunt and Getting the Love That You Want and Imago Therapy, but it comes out of that work. And it's very exciting because to me, I always want to find the fastest way to get the most out of something. How can I change this very deep thing the fastest? How can I make the biggest impact in the least amount of time? But it won't be with the least amount of effort. It will be with stretching yourself.
Yeah. So now we've got a couple of things from what I'm hearing. One is still, what is an emotional block? Let's start with that one.
Well, an emotional block is any trigger or
Mm-hmm.
response that you have that gets in the way of you getting to the next level of whatever it is you're interested in your life.
Okay.
So, I teach law of attraction. I've been teaching it for many years, and people understand that there are things that you probably want that you do not have.
Mm.
And maybe you attempt to affirm them, vision board them, whatever, into reality. And maybe you even get close to that thing, but most of us will sabotage it because we don't understand what's stopping us from becoming the next version of ourselves to allow it in. So whether it be fear or limiting belief or whatever, I mean,
Okay.
it's basically going to be a fear, limiting belief, or a core wound or an upper limit that prevent us from getting to the next level of health, getting to the next level of relationship, getting to the next level of abundance. Whatever it is, they're all blocked by the same patterns and belief systems that were
Okay.
created in us when we were young.
Okay. And so would those be the core wounds?
Yes. Part of it is
Okay.
core wounds. Well, actually, most of it's core wounds because most of us don't know what they are.
Mm.
Most people are walking
Mhm.
around with, imagine that you're a computer, you have a blank slate, you're a brand new computer, there's no programs. From the time you were almost born, so 3 months before you were born until 7, your brain only has theta and alpha waves running, and alpha is sleeping and relaxing, and theta is hypnosis. So basically, everything around you becomes a program installed in your brain from the position of how do I survive? And how do I get love and attention and be taken care of and feel safe? So we're not choosing to believe these things. Our brain is making sense of the world around us from what we're exposed to, our parents, our grandparents, our siblings, the world, whatever's going on in the world, whatever television we're listening to, whatever programs are in front of us. Our brains have to make sense of that. And therefore, we create these beliefs. And they're
Mhm.
called core wounds. And then we become 7 and we become conscious. And now we can think about thinking and we have more choice, but we don't have that before 7. And most people are, getting married, getting divorced, getting married, getting divorced, or go to a job and it always goes the same way. It's great at first, and something happens, they get triggered and then they're unhappy, and then they quit and they change to another job and they do it all over again. And they do it again and again and again. Or they move and they love where they're living and they love their house and they rearrange their furniture 10 times and then they find themselves not happy again. So then they move again and start the process all over. And these patterns happen all the time, but no one ever looks at, well, there's a reason why these patterns are happening. It's not external, it's internal. But most people don't know what their core wounds are. So they don't know the drivers. They don't know the programs. They don't know the interpretation that's happening every day that could really make sense of your entire life.
So the workshops and the action items and things of that nature that you've got and that you work through, I'm guessing that a lot of these type of, like your 14-day manifestation challenge, we've got an embodied healing intensive applications being accepted for their rewiring your core wound patterns. That's phenomenal just in and of itself, I think, because that one is probably going to say, here's your core wound. And it's not going to be served to you necessarily on a silver platter, but it's probably going to take a little work, right, to get there, to figure it out. But you're there to help guide them through the process. And, and that's what we need. Because like you said, most of us don't know what our core wounds are. I was probably in my 40s before I realized a couple of really major core wounds that I had. And like you said, JJ, it's just like you said. I had no idea. I had no idea what it was. And then it just started showing its ugly head on so many different levels and so many different facets of my life. And I said, "Oh, now I get it." And do you get those awake moments? I'll bet it just probably thrills you when you see that in a client's life, isn't it?
Well, it doesn't take as much time as you think. Actually, there's an
No.
exercise. It's a 8-page exercise that someone fills out about different
Oh
aspects of
yeah.
their childhood, and then we extract the data from that. That's where which when I interviewed Harville and Helen for the last time, I mean, I've interviewed them like, I don't know, 7 or 8 times. And this last time, because they have a new book out, I said, we were just chatting about dialoguing and monologuing and communication and it's amazing how you can take one subject matter and work with it for so long and still fine tune it, which is what they've done. And I was sort of toe to toe with why. Harville was talking about how we don't monologue or how we don't dialogue and why. And I said, well, here, can we talk about why? And then I explained the whole core wound thing, which is their concept anyway. And he's like, wow, you really understand this. And I'm like, yeah, I said, I have to be honest. I've taken your core wound exercise and created a whole business around it. I have a program I've created a core wound map. It felt really good to finally fess up about it. And he was like, oh my God, I want to know about that. I want you to show it to me. And I'm like, I will be glad to show it to you because, because everyone's point of view is different. In imago therapy, you're dealing with how the couple can communicate and heal each other. But I always pull things out individually and say, well, what about the individual? Why do I have to wait to be in a relationship? Why can't I work on my things now? So how do I take responsibility for what my wounds are outside of relationship with my partner and in relationship with the world? And so then I just started to extract data from this exercise and then continue to fine tune it in a couple different ways. And one of the ways is, yes, once we identify your top 3 core wounds, we look at how you, the individual, continue to keep it alive, because there are things that we all do that continue to anchor that core wound deeper and deeper because we're not changing our behavior. Because again, it's something we believe, just like when you discovered it, you had no idea. You can't change something that you don't know is there.
Right.
So you first have to understand, why do I keep sabotaging myself? Why do I keep putting myself in these positions? But when you understand why, now we have some information of what to stop doing. Here are the things I do. And then we can look for, now, what do I do about it? And then how do I catch the circuit? How do I catch the trigger? And not that I'm, because I call it the anatomy of a trigger, basically. And it's looking at what happens in the subconscious when you have a trigger moment, which is basically one of your core wounds gets activated, it gets triggered. And then you have a physical response. Basically, it's what PTSD is. It's just in a more intense way. And then you have an emotion, and then you have a reaction. So if we understand sort of the brain's circuit that happens instantaneously, and we can become aware of it, the more we're aware of it, we can become an observer to it, and then we can have distance from it. And now we can make choices a little bit sooner, and we cannot jump into, because when people get triggered, they'll like catastrophize it. Oh my God, that person hates me. I'm worthless. Nobody likes me. Like they'll go into this and when you can see it for what it is, you go, oh, it's just my wound. Oh, that core wound of this being devalued just got triggered. And now we have shortened the time I'm spending spiraling in a negative momentum that's deepening the wound, and I can get out of it quicker, and I can create a new pathway by choosing to react differently.
And you've just described the same thing that I was talking about. The concept is heart math. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am. I'm not super familiar with it. I know about it, but I've never taken the course, but I do understand it.
Yeah, because it basically is going down the same thing that you're talking about. That's what the freeze frame does. It takes you through the stages and recognizing, oh, this is why this is happening. And I'm able to step back away from whatever the situation is and basically take a quick breath or 2 or 3 or 10 and then observe objectively, why am I doing this? And then the last part of that is to say, how do I fix it? And, to me, one of the classics to me is, why do I keep going back and, get a divorce, get remarried, go to a job. That's honeymoon period. How many times have we heard that one? I'll go to the new place. I'll go to the new town. I'll go to the new country. I'll go to the new state. And it's a honeymoon period. And then the honeymoon period wears off and we go right back to the way we were. And the reason we do that is because it's always worked for us before. And if we don't want to keep doing that, we need to change. We need to rehardwire, like you said. We need to remove those emotional blocks. We need to overcome those core wounds. So, wow, that's phenomenal stuff. That's incredible stuff.
I think it's exciting. It's uncovering what. I mean, I look at core wounds and I could tell somebody exactly why they've chosen everything they've chosen, from where they live to what they do to who they're friends with to why they chose the people in their lives. It all shows you the pattern. It shows you, and to me, clarity is very important. I can handle being uncomfortable emotionally, and that's not a problem, because as long as I know what it is, I'm sad, I'm grieving. Like I had a cat that died about a month ago. And she was 2 and she was taken by a coyote, and it was tragic and it was awful. And I had the ability at that time, that week, to literally just sob and cry. And my my partner, who we mourned the day that it happened, and then he had to take off. He had plans to go to the East Coast. And he's like, this is probably a really bad time to leave. And I said, no, this is probably a good time, because knowing you as a guy, you're going to go back to work tomorrow. You're going to busy yourself with work. And I think we need a longer time to grieve. I need more time. So him not being here gave me the opportunity to just cry and cry and cry and cry and yell and yell and yell and just be able to process. And I'm not uncomfortable, because I understand I'm grieving. I'm sad. I'm frustrated. I'm super, super sad. And I'm going to be in that sadness as much as I need to be until it's gone. And honestly, I mean, I cried the entire week. I think Friday was the first. She died on a Sunday night, Monday morning. And I cried all day, every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday was the first day I didn't cry, and I haven't really cried since. And not that I'm not sad about it, but I really processed it because I had the space to do it. And it's one thing when we don't understand what's going on. I had a live event 2 weeks ago, the Embodied Healing Intensive, and
Yeah.
I definitely got triggered. I was definitely upper limited by a thought or idea, and it wasn't even because I can pivot really well, but I was unclear. It was a shock. It was and I was like, oh my God. And for days, I even worked with somebody who was on my show, and he was like doing a session with me, and I said, I'm okay with feeling sad about this. I'm okay with feeling fear about this. What bothers me is the lack of clarity about why or what I'm going to do about it. And then I just let it be for a couple of days. And then divine timing came in, and a client who I was helping mentioned a book I hadn't read and a concept I didn't know about. And 24 hours later, I was like, oh my God, that's it. And I had the clarity that I needed, and I'm off to the races. So, but I think when it comes to people processing emotion, people suck at it. People do not process their emotion. They think about their emotion. They suppress their emotion. They don't have space and time to deal with it. They don't take space and time to deal with it. And they don't allow themselves to feel their feelings. And that's why we as a society are afraid of emotions. We're afraid of feeling because it means we're going to lose control. And that scares the crap out of most people.
You just reminded me. We are avid watchers of Only Murders in the Building.
Yeah, we watch it too.
I just saw the latest episode, and Steve Martin. I forgot the guy that's playing his part in the movie, but
Levy, Dan Levy.
yeah,
Not Dan
yeah.
Levy, Eugene Levy.
Yeah, so he knew that Steve Martin was holding off on showing his anger, and he kept prodding away. I'm going to do something to get your anger out. And everybody listening, if you want to see Steve Martin come unglued, it was wonderful. And he didn't say a word, he didn't utter a sound. It was all silent. It was just like one giant silent movie of him losing it. And it was so funny. It was great. But you know something? There's so much truth within that. You know, it's okay to lose it. It's okay to do it to a point, but you express yourself. Man.
I would say it's necessary. It just, yes, we don't want people to hurt themselves or others while expressing your emotions.
Right.
But the illusion is that you have control in the first place.
Yeah. Sure.
Well, right, because I can't cry because I'll lose control. Do you think you have control? Because regardless if you decide, because you have an energy that you're literally holding on to, which is one of the reasons it causes anxiety. People think anxiety is a condition, like you just got it, like, oh, I have anxiety. No, anxiety means you're holding on to a bunch of emotions that you're not letting out. And it's literally rolling around inside your body. It's energy that you're trying to keep in. It's like holding, like you have to go to the bathroom and you're just holding it. You're holding it. Like you're eventually going to explode. It's going to hurt you to hold on to and not let your body do what it's asking you to allow it to do, which is to express. And the same thing happens with emotions. If you do not give space to cry, to yell, to allow yourself to feel your feelings, you will have anxiety, you will have depression from lack of expression, and you're going to have physical ailments. So let go of the idea that you're even in control, because you're not. And it's an illusion. Control is an addiction. So for anyone that thinks they don't have an addiction, control is one of the biggest soft addictions that we have, because it's an illusion. You don't have control. Except of what you choose to do, think, feel, and allow. That's it. You don't have control over anybody else or circumstances around you. So that's not a concept that people are willing to accept until they have to, until they get cancer, until they get divorced, until they have a physical ailment that forces them to be honest about the things that they have
Hmm.
not allowed themselves to feel.
Be honest. That's it. Be honest with yourself.
I had a client at this last workshop at the Embodied Healing Intensive who she's been listening for a year, and she came to the intensive, and she's going to actually do another program that I created this year called Date Your Body, and I'm doing another one in January. And she texted me yesterday and said, "Okay, well, the good news is, because again, Embodied Healing Intensive was about connecting with our bodies, was about again embodying this idea that 88% of your subconscious and your emotions and decision making and intuitive self lives in your body, and most
Right.
people are in their head." So she texts me and says, "Okay, the good news is that I'm now feeling all of my feelings, and the dam has broken." And the bad news is that my blood pressure is up and my doctor wants to put me on meds. So I said, "Well, you need to," and she said, "I know you're not a doctor, but what do you recommend that I do?" And I gave her some suggestions. But I did say, find a space to let go of the emotions because you've been holding on to them for so long that there's a pressure on the inside of the body, which is causing your blood pressure to rise. You have to you have to allow it out. And she goes, "Yeah, that's hard because someone's always home." Like she literally doesn't have space to do what I did when Doug left and just wail and cry and allow herself to let the pressure out, let the air out of the balloon. That's what's happening. And but it's really necessary for all of us to do that.
Is that where the clarifying exercises come in?
No, the clarifying exercises, I mean, that could be one of them. It just depends on you. So let's say if you have a core wound of abandonment,
Okay.
and we find the ways in which you self-abandon. Maybe you don't exercise enough. Maybe you don't eat well. Maybe you want to write a book and you're not doing it. Maybe you're not putting yourself out into the world the way that you need to, or you say no a lot of times, or you're upper limiting in that way. So the clarifying exercises would be to uncover where you need to stop doing behaviors that keep that core wound alive. And then the kicker, the most important part of this, the reason why I do small group coaching with this is because that can desensitize a little bit and bring down the intensity of a trigger, but it isn't going to create a new belief. The new
Hmm.
belief has to be something that you stretch into, that your brain wants to stop you from. It creates neuroplasticity because the brain goes, "No, I'm afraid." And then you do it, and the brain goes, "Oh, okay, I didn't die. I was okay." And now that's where the new neural pathway gets. But you have to challenge that in order to make a new belief. Well, that's one of the ways you can do it. So the clarifying exercises becomes how do I stretch you into a belief where you accept yourself versus abandon
Hmm.
yourself, where you care for
Ah,
yourself deeply. It's taking and reversing whatever the wound is. So if one of my core wounds is devalued, how do I value myself? How do
okay.
I display to myself that I value myself? What do I need to do that proves to myself that I value myself? And then I have to stretch into that.
So the clarifying exercise is more of an activity that helps to identify and work through whatever that core issue might be.
It's what changes the wound. It's what
Yeah.
desensitizes it, what creates the neural pathways, but it's individually based on, it's not a cookie cutter thing. I mean, I could, yes,
Hmm.
say generally anyone with an abandonment wound is probably self-abandoning in many, many ways. But if I don't know you, I can't give you the best recommendation, because together that's where we figure out, okay, how do you abandon yourself? And then you would tell me the ways. And then from there, we would make decisions about, all right, what's going to stretch you? What are you willing to do? I might make a huge, like I might say, it's time for you to write a book or do a podcast or do a webinar or put yourself, whatever, stretch yourself in a new way, have a conversation with your family, put on commit to something that takes care of your body better. So again, the clarifying exercises are very personalized. And that's what I want to say about this work. Could you figure some of that out yourself? Of course. And I even have a course called the Roadmap to Emotional Healing, where it doesn't give you the full map because I hadn't created it yet, but you can get your core wounds. You can get the general map of your core wounds by doing this course on your own. But we are creatures of habit that want to stay safe and stay in our
Hmm.
comfort zone. So the
Hmm.
likelihood that you're going to stretch yourself past that, and I'm a
Yes.
good stretcher, I mean, like for myself, but it's until you have somebody who's watching you, who's expecting you, who's waiting for you, that you have to report to and be accountable to, you're going
Hmm.
to do whatever you're still going to do whatever's the safest thing because that's just how we're wired.
Yeah. Because I don't want to be uncomfortable.
Correct.
Perish the thought that I would get uncomfortable.
Right.
Damn it.
Yep. But if you want true change, and that's why, I mean, there are other ways that people can have experiences. Some of them, there's a big, have you seen How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan?
No.
On Netflix? Okay. It's about plant medicine, and plant medicine is definitely.
Wait. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yes. That's another tool to help rewire the brain in specific ways. And depending on if you're microdosing or do a heroic dose in a journey, but even that's not a guarantee to your behavior. It's an awareness. It does open up new neural pathways, and it does give you another perspective you aren't going to get otherwise. And sometimes that's enough. I started to get interested in it when a doctor friend of mine told me how, because she's a cancer doctor, how a lot of cancer patients who are terminally ill would have these experiences. And basically they would let go of their fear of death. And because they are no longer afraid, they would heal, and they would at least outlive their diagnosis. I don't know, some many years past their diagnosis. And I thought, okay, this is a good tool for people that don't know how to get out of their own way or aren't willing to. Well, you're going to be uncomfortable when you do a journey, for sure, at one point in time. But if you want it if you want a big leap quickly, it's a good way to go. But there are smaller ways, more comfortable ways, and the identification. I think that's really important too, when people can understand how they interpret the world, because you can do a lot of emotional clearing and healings and subconscious work. But if you come back to reality with your computer that literally looks at the same situation and interprets it the same exact way, we're going to get right back to where we were. Mm-hmm. We have to, which is why I have a talk on my site, which I'm sure you saw, called The 3 Reasons Why Talk Therapy is Ineffective. Yeah. And for anyone who's listening who has a wonderful therapist who literally, you are different in the same situation, this is not for you. But for a lot of people who are literally in therapy for 5, 7, 10 years, talking about the same situation, being triggered by the same situation over and over again, there's a problem with that, because you come in with this body of information of what your way of interpreting the world, your frames, your what's the other word people say, your filters. You have your filters of how you interpret things. If you do not learn something new, you'll never interpret it a different way. That's right. We have to grow past and learn how to see things differently for you to react differently, for you to interpret differently. And if you're a therapist, which most of them don't, they're not necessarily teaching you things. They're listening to you. They're validating you. Right? Again, traditional talk therapy. If you're doing EMDR and hypnosis and things like that, that's great. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about someone's literally just listening to you tell the same story over and over again for 10 years, validating you, maybe asking you how you feel about that, but the situation hasn't changed. That to me is insanity. And that's why I do what I do, because I've had people work with me for 2 sessions after 10 years of therapy and say my whole life changed. And it's because I taught them a new way of looking at something, which then made them feel 1,000,000 times better. It changed everything.
Yeah, because it's a different approach, and it's an approach that works, not just because it's different, but it's something that actually works. And that's where you and I are on the same page. Not that we haven't been up to now.
Well, I look at it as facts. Like, a client of mine he was an addict for a long time. He was in recovery, but he was about ready to get divorced. And his whole, what was eating him up inside was this idea that his father didn't love him. And he was using his own, very small point of view to judge that. But that's what we do. And and when he gave his story about why he was having this anger about his dad, I'm like, and again, when people work with me, you have to have a level of trust with me. But I basically, I said, you're totally wrong. Let me just tell you right now, you're totally wrong. Let me tell you how it is from your dad's perspective. And then I went through and I use different kinds of frameworks that I teach, love language being one of them, astrology being another one, birth order being another one, whatever. So I use these different frameworks to tell the story differently. And then all of a sudden, literally overnight, after 30 some years of pain, he finally felt love from his dad. He could look at the situation. He could look at his dad had passed. He could look back at his life. And instead of seeing pain and rejection, he saw love. And he was like, it was life-changing. And he said, is this as easy as it can be? I said, it can. You can't change the past, but you sure can change your interpretation of it, which changes everything about how you feel about it, about how you respond to it, about how you feel about yourself. It can change everything because we have blinders on We don't know what it's like to look from someone else's point of view. We don't understand how someone else interprets things differently than we do. This is where the education to me is imperative. You have to learn something new to change what's going on for you and to be better.
One of the things that you just talked about and mentioned was the father had died, and he was able to work through this even though his father died. I just read something the other day about forgiveness, and they talked about how the last thing that you need to do if you're going through the forgiveness process, for an example, is go talk to that person that you forgive them. You don't need to do that, because the person that receives the best out of this whole forgiveness process is you, not the person that offed you, that created problems for you. And they went on to say, even the people that are dead. And they say, how can you do that? It's an energetic thing. You change the energy, you change the power that thought process has on you, and you say, oh, okay, I can move beyond that, and that's all right. Now I feel better.
It's funny that you were talking about the person doesn't have to be alive. At my event, I did an exercise with people that, it was I just go intuitively about what people need, and then I create that and I bring the tools that I think they need, and I can change it on the instant depending on what the room, like the feeling of the room is and where people are. And I use this exercise that I use with people sometimes. And I thought, okay, let's try this out. Let's see if this is going to work. And I was nervous. I even said to Doug, I said, I don't know if this is going to be effective or not during the exercise. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work. Mm-hmm. And then lo and behold, because it was basically safe conversations or the couple's dialogue, again, out of Imago therapy. And the goal was it didn't have to be your partner, because you had people that you weren't your partners there, people who didn't even know each other, who were playing the game, if you will. And standing in for your person. And because I had done it with a client who was here, he had some other stuff to work on. And we talked about him doing the dialogue with his mom. And then when he was here with the group, I said, well, let's do it right now, and I'll be your mom. And we went through this entire dialogue. And by the time we were over, he was like, oh, I'm good. I don't even need to talk to my mom. And I said, well, I still want you to talk to your mom, because I still think it would be a good opportunity. But the pain had gone. We had worked through it. It was over. So then I thought, oh, well, let's do this as a group. But then I got nervous thinking, these people aren't me. I could intuit and interpret what his mom is feeling and why she did it. I know enough of the information to know that. And I got nervous thinking, is this even going to work? And people came in and everyone was crying, and they're like, that was the best. They felt so seen and heard. They could put it down. They could let it go. And again, it was just giving them the space and the time and the framework to say the things out loud and to express all their feelings in a safe environment. And they didn't need to tell the person. And some of the people were dead. I had somebody whose mom was not living, and the fact that she could say those things, she felt a million times better, because we hold on to it. And that's where we have to be able to find ways to allow it out, to reframe it in a not for reframing purposes, but for understanding that you're probably wrong. Your interpretation of what happened is one-sided with limited information. You don't know what it was like to be them. And the minute you can understand for a second what it was like to be them and why they chose what they chose, you'll stop taking it so damn personally and let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. Stop taking it personally and let it go. Yeah.
Yes.
You hurt my feelings. Oh, and oh dear. So this has been wonderful. So one of the things I want to mention, everyone, is if you want, we've talked about the website a couple of times, and JJ, would you just tell the folks the best way to get in touch with you?
So if you're listening to this podcast, I have a podcast also. I have many actually, but Spirit, Purpose, and Energy would be the one I would send you to. You can find all the podcasts at my website, jjflizanes.com. You can find everything at my website, jjflizanes.com. It's pretty easy, jjflizanes.com. Again, you could type in my name in your browser for your podcast, wherever you're listening, and find the podcast that way. I've got a couple free classes. One I already mentioned, the 3 reasons why talk therapy is ineffective. I do run a 14-day manifestation challenge. The next one will probably be in 2025. So just come on over to the site, because it'll be there. The next one will be listed as to when that is. It's free 14-day manifestation challenge. You get a lot of tools. There's even some live calls and Facebook Q&A and all kinds of interactions that I give during that 2-week time to help you increase and change your frequency so you can better see what is that you want, how to get it, and then potentially what blocks are in the way. But yeah, and then again, social media, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. Just go to jjflazanes.com and figure out what you want.
Yeah. And one of the things that you can do, everyone, is when you go to her site, is you can kind of click through and you can see where it has engage. This has courses, group programs, events, want to be a VIP, and merchandise. Merch? Is that merchandise?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. So do you do individual? I'm guessing you do. Well, you just said that you had a client. So you do individual work with folks as well?
I don't do individual work with people off, like you have to be in a group. So I have 3, 6, 9, and 12-month programs.
Okay.
I work with people individually when you're in a program.
Yeah.
Because I want the bigger commitment. And what happens in a program. So for instance, in January, I'm running a program called Date Your Body. I might still have spaces open. I do have 4 spots available right now in Date Your Body. And that's a 3-month program. And then there's Rewiring Your Core Wound Patterns, also starting in January. That's a 6-month program. Right now, there's 2 spots left. And then I also have a business mastermind called the Inner Circle Mastermind. But what I'm doing this year is going to be a little bit different. It's going to go between, it's always emotional and business, always. But this time I'm actually going to add in a new level of healing and manifestation called The Power of 8. I don't know if you know Lynn McTaggart's book, The Power of 8, but she's coming on the show at the end of the month. So we can talk about it, but I want to use this concept in the mastermind for 2025 because people normally dump in the mastermind after they've done an emotional program. So I want to make sure it's inclusive of all the things in their life, from money to health to relationships.
Okay, good. And what does JJ do to create a better life for herself?
I listen to myself, I listen to my body, and I respond accordingly.
Bravo. Nothing fancy. Just
nothing fancy. I just listen.
Yeah. And that's what we don't do, isn't it? Or isn't it not? What the hell?
Well, we overthink it. We lead with our brain and ignore the body, and it has to go in reverse. Like, it's body first. Let the body tell you what it needs, and then listen and then do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what we need to do. And if we could just practice that a little bit more, it's certainly going to help us out a lot more. Any other thoughts that you would want to share to our audience today, JJ? This has been exciting. This has been certainly eye-opening and enthusiastic. I love it. Good.
What would I share with the audience? Everything is fixable, even if it's something that, like you think is final, like death or something that's happened. I think that I believe everything happens for a reason, that there's a part of us in this current physical form that does attract some of the things that happen in our experience. I also do believe that you set it all in motion before you got here in the first place. So some things you're just not going to control. So it's living in that space of surrender with an inkling of responsibility also for how you show up, and with the opportunity every day to make that choice of how you show up and how you approach things. And ultimately, if you made this whole plan before you got here, you don't know what's coming, but how you handle it is completely up to you.
JJ Flazane, this has been wonderful. Thanks ever so much for being the guest today on Toward a Better Life, and go enjoy a grand life today.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, JJ, for showing us some strategies for our personal empowerment. You may contact JJ Flazane through her website, jjflazanes.com. That's jjflizanes.com. In fact, there are some links for JJ Flazanes and Dave the Bard in the show notes. Don't forget, if you're seeking insights and advice on how to create a better life for yourself, please visit my website, towardabetterlife.com, where you can connect with me for virtual and in-person sessions. And just send your inquiry to kevin@towardabetterlife.com for those details. The website also has more Toward a Better Life episodes, and it also has a blog and ways to enhance your spiritual journey, a few products here and there to assist you on that journey, including the opportunity to buy my book, 2 Feathers, Spiritual Seed Planter. If you enjoyed the episode and learned something really good today, please follow and subscribe to Toward a Better Life through your favorite podcast platform. Be sure to leave a review for me on Apple Podcast. It just helps support the program, and it allows us to reach more and more people. If you've got any questions, or if you have a story to share, or some music or prose, if it's an audio file, please send it to me in an MP3. And if you want to be a guest, any of that stuff, just write to me, Kevin@towardaBetterLife.com. That's Kevin@towardaBetterLife.com. Until next week, enjoy your journey toward a better life.